Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining today's edition of our OIE Meetup series. Today's session is a very special fireside chat edition where you'll get an opportunity to hear from a longtime Okta customer and an OIE early adopter, Intercom. I am joined, as always, by my colleague, Dimitri Volkman from our product marketing team. My name is Brent Arrington. I'm a member of the product acceleration team here at Okta, focusing on OIE. And today we're very happy to be joined by two very special guests, Greg Lorenz and Lucas Cantor. Greg is a 12-year Okta veteran. He has led multiple global organizations at Okta, including professional services, customer success, business value, and currently he leads our product acceleration team. Prior to joining Okta, Greg worked at a variety of technology organizations, including Accenture, Sun Microsystems, and Oracle. And the constant theme across Greg's career has been his passion for driving successful customer outcomes. Now, Greg will be joined today by our guest of honor, Lucas Cantor. Lucas is a staff engineer on the IT infrastructure team at Intercom, the complete AI-first customer service platform. Lucas has spent nearly a decade leveraging Okta to build a world-class approach to identity, in part by being a very enthusiastic early adopter of many Okta features, including OIE. Now, before we dive into today's conversation, I will present you with our ubiquitous safe harbor disclaimer. There may be some forward-looking statements in today's discussion. And just some logistical notes before we dive in. Today's session, as I mentioned, is a special fireside chat edition. So in just a moment, I'm going to be handing it off to Greg to have that conversation. When we are finished with the chat, we will have time for some Q&A. Lucas has been kind enough to agree to take some audience questions. So as you're listening to the webinar, if you have questions, please add those questions to the Q&A section in Zoom. And once we're finished with the main discussion, we'll have an opportunity to address audience questions from the Q&A as well. And then once we're finished with that, if we have time, Dimitri is going to take us through some OIE resources that are available to you and walk us through a reminder of how to go through the upgrade process if you've not already done that. All right. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Greg to have a fireside chat conversation with our special guest, Lucas. Greg, please take it away.
All right. Hey, thanks, Brent. And Lucas, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today about Okta Identity Engine and your experience at Intercom. I guess maybe to get started, Lucas, do you mind kind of giving the audience an overview about Intercom and the solutions you guys bring to market and the mission and focus of the company?
Sure. Yeah, as Brent mentioned, my name is Lucas Cantor. I'm a staff IT systems engineer at Intercom. Intercom is the only complete AI-first customer service platform, and our team basically provides the foundation of corporate IT infrastructure that the entire company runs on. So all the identity and access management, single sign-on, all the things you would think about when you think Okta, but really just broadly speaking, corporate IT security, InfoSec, and how that all integrates to Okta in general. Like you said, we've been an early adopter of OIE, so very happy to talk about that here today.
All right. Well, yeah, maybe before we dive into OIE specifically, I'll ask one other question, and that is, how do you think about identity as it relates to the business, technical challenges, security focus for Intercom?
Yeah, I mean, it maybe is almost trite at this point to say, like, I think Okta's used to say, think beyond the perimeter, was like way back when, right? It's like, so for us, identity is the perimeter, right? We don't have a corporate network that you can be inside to be considered like, safe and inside, like on a VPN or something like that. Like we don't trust our office network any more than we would trust the network at Starbucks. So really it's down to the identity of, the employee or even the device that they're using, whether it's trusted, and then getting just constant contextual signals in real time, whether the device has a healthy security posture, whether there's an anomaly, whether there's a impossible travel, like only Superman could have possibly, logged in from China 1 minute and then America the next, or vice versa. Yeah, I mean, at this point, yeah, we don't even like to say zero trust anymore because it's almost overused. But I guess you could say like that's our position.
Okay, that's great. Well, our newest views around identity is, identity is security. So all the things you mentioned, the perimeters continue to change. Whether
Right.
you're dealing with an employee or a customer or a partner, those boundaries continue to evolve, and the bad actors that are out there are getting more creative. And so, yes, I think we would completely align with you, the critical role that identity plays. Now that might lead into some specific questions about OIE. I should say Intercom has been a customer of Okta's for many, many years. And Intercom started off on what we'll call our classic platform prior to OIE being available. And when we launched OIE, several years ago, we touted some key differences that the OIE platform provided. I'm curious your take as to what some of those key drivers were that interested Intercom in actually upgrading to OIE.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk about that. I will apologize in advance that ironically it's been so long that we've been on OIE that it's perhaps hard to remember how good we have had it and for how long. But just thinking way back, I think probably the biggest driver was FastPass being OIE exclusive. And obviously, FastPass is the specific implementation, but the goal that we were trying to achieve is, as I was saying before, context aware, biometric, passwordless auth, integrating with third party like EDR, like we use CrowdStrike, for example, and just gathering as much context and signals in real time during that authentication while making it an even more frictionless experience for our end users, and making it not just less likely that they will be phished, but basically impossible just by the very design. Because, if your password is neither necessary nor sufficient to log in, then it doesn't matter if someone phishes your password. So that probably was the one specific thing. Broadly speaking, though, Okta communicated very clearly that OIE is the way forward, and we could see the writing on the wall. That there's specific features and security capabilities that are going to be coming out that are exclusive to OIE, and we always want to be on that bleeding edge, and never miss an opportunity that we don't want to be stuck, if you will, in classic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great. You're right. Like, it's been several years, and thinking about all the innovation that's been released since OIE initially came out, there's a long list of new things. But going back to FastPass, I think that is probably single most, I think the shining jewel of why initially customers did want to get to OIE, and that is to leverage FastPass and have that passwordless experience, but also be able to deliver a phishing resistant experience as well. So provide a better user experience, but at the same time provide a more secure authentication as well. And typically those things don't go hand in hand. And so I'm curious. For FastPass, it seems like that was a big driver.
Yeah.
Was that one of the first things you rolled out? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always say to people, you can never make the more secure option if it's not also the path of least resistance, the easiest option, right? Because people will follow that path of least resistance to get their job done, because it is literally their job, right? They're just trying to do their job. They don't think about identity. They don't think about security. They're just trying to log in. And if you don't make it automatic and easiest to use the phishing resistant, frictionless way, then they're going to do it a less secure way. So it's really nice when it's not like a secret that we want it to be more secure, but we get that benefit of security while the worker who's signing in gets the benefit of, for example, passwordless. So everybody gets to win at the same time, basically.
Yeah, that's great. Do you recall, Lucas, when you first rolled it out? Because you were one of the earlier adopters of OIE. Was that experience frictionless itself? I know we've since enhanced, the capability that FastPass provides, but
I will say, for most of our users, they didn't want, I mean, there's a lot of difference in the sense that, they were able to just use biometrics to sign in. But for us, as the administrators of our Okta organization, because we were such early adopters, there were certain, I don't want to say pain points, but just, it was very early. So we, for example, had certain authenticators that were not available in that early stage of OIE. And so certain accounts, not our employees, but like, for example, we have these shared bot service account users, and we had to change the type of authenticators that they use because the previous one wasn't available yet in OIE. And then so that required reorganization of our authentication policies and stuff like that. And none of that friction exists anymore for Okta administrators, which is nice. So like, there's even less of an excuse to put that off today, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things I've been at Okta for many years, and one thing I guess I think that keeps me so energized about Okta as a company and thinking about our customers is transparency. And we realize, early on as we roll out new innovation, we may not get it perfect, from the very beginning. But what's important is to listen to that feedback and iterate and make those improvements. So with FastPass, as you said, I can recall talking to other customers early on, there were just certain use cases that we didn't fully address. Maybe the documentation wasn't as accurate as it should have been or complete. And so that did lead to some initial friction during rollout. But yeah, it seems like you've experienced some of those pain points going away, and hopefully you're seeing that Okta is listening to your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, documentation is another good example to bring up. We definitely we tend to be such early adopters or even beta testers of these features that the docs are perhaps not complete, as you said. And so we constantly are getting feedback to Okta that, hey, this was kind of difficult and ambiguous, and maybe you want to add this to your docs on this procedure. And you do, which is nice.
That's good. Good. Well, we do. Yeah, we try. No, thanks. The feedback, and I encourage any other customers that are paying attention to this. Please do provide us your feedback. I mean, we try to not only provide the best cutting edge technology out there, but we also want to make that technology as easy to adopt and administer and support as possible as well. And that doesn't mean, again, the first time we're going to have everything right. But when we get that feedback in terms of documentation improvement, product improvement, those ideas, we really do take those to heart. So I think we've made huge strides over the last couple of years in terms of the upgrade and even the capabilities that OIE provides around FastPass and device context, which maybe we can talk about in a minute. But we also want to make sure that those things, for those of you that have not yet upgraded or adopted some of these newer capabilities, we want to make it as easy for you to leverage as possible. So whether you're going to our community site or you look through our inline docs or you put a ticket through our support organization, we want you to get the right answer to make those things as simple to address as possible.
For sure. Yeah. And we, like I said, we appreciate that. And we know we're a very vocal customer for better or for worse. And maybe not necessarily every one of our ideas is instantly turned into a feature, but we definitely see it when that input gets reflected in the product. And I mean, OIE was a compelling upgrade for us, way back when, but now there's been so much added based on the past several years of, like we've just been discussing, all this sort of feedback loop, that yeah, it's incredibly compelling today.
Yeah, great. Well, we talked about the passwordless experience and FastPass, and you mentioned biometrics, et cetera. Maybe we could talk a little bit about device context. That was another area of large investment for OIE.
Sure.
Do you have any feedback and comments on that experience?
Again, just trying to remember what it was like before OIE, but I know the device. So yeah, we call it device context. There's sort of many facets of it. There was device trust, right? To attach that the device is just managed in general.
Right.
That I think is significantly easier, particularly across both mobile and desktop and Windows and Mac OS. And now you even support Chrome and Chrome OS, which didn't exist back then. So that's a huge opportunity. We're very excited about that. In addition to that, we use device assurance, right? So we get context-aware signals on all sorts of criteria, about the device's security posture at a very granular level. And really critically, now we can actually, when someone's device doesn't meet that device assurance policy, like for example, let's say the disk is not encrypted, even though our policy says it has to be to sign into this sensitive app, or maybe their OS is out of date, with a critical security patch. It empowers the user. It tells them exactly what criteria they're not meeting, and here's a link describing the instructions that they have to follow so they can self-solve. I mean, that's just amazing for IT, right? It just eliminates an entire category of IT support tickets. Big fans of that. Been waiting a long time for that, frankly. But happy it's here.
Yeah.
And then, like I also said, EDR integrations, right? So getting signals from, I don't know how many you've added. I know CrowdStrike, I think, was like your initial partner. That's a very powerful one. I will say, I actually, it's not all perfect, rosy. The one piece of feedback I'm getting constantly from our users is when they don't meet that CrowdStrike, minimum CrowdStrike score, for example, we're not able to give them that real-time actionable feedback that tells them how to resolve it because for whatever reason, I guess because it's a third party. So that typically results in an IT support ticket getting open, basically, if you will. Obviously, from a security perspective, it's still ideal because it prevents somebody with an unhealthy device without, passing that CrowdStrike security attestation from signing in. But I know you guys are constantly improving these things.
No, and again, I'll be very clear. We do strive to not just provide the most secure experiences and solutions, but also provide a wonderful, great end user experience. And so those friction points that you mentioned, they do matter, and we do care about those. Again, we believe we can improve both of those things at the same time and not sacrifice versus the other. So yeah, thanks for that feedback. And we will, again, it doesn't always get prioritized day one, but
right.
We're going to listen and incorporate that into our plans.
Always appreciate it. And yeah, what I was going to say is, honestly, it's because you guys spoil us with so much of the experience that you set the bar so high for yourselves that now we have, all of this. Okay, well, now you got to do it here too.
Yeah. Well, I think, I've always viewed our customers not really as customers or vendor. I view the relationships as partnerships. And again, there are goals and business objectives that you guys have at Intercom that we can help with. And if we're able to help you accelerate those outcomes and drive better results for the company, then that helps us. And so sharing that feedback and having those debates is really important to further our
debates is one way to put it.
Exactly. Yeah, debates, good way, right?
Yeah, there's always back and forth, which is the important thing.
Yeah. Well, no, that's really good. And maybe one other thing about OIE, we don't necessarily call it out a whole lot, but OIE provides a lot more flexible policy engine. The way you can policy. Yeah, curious if that's something that Intercom has been able to take advantage of. And I know it's been a while, so maybe you are, but you forgot what it was like before.
Right. In the before times. So we make heavy use of the sort of modularization of all the policies in Okta that we have in OIE. And in fact, this is a really good example of another thing that we use, which is Okta's Terraform provider. So we manage our Okta organization via this concept of infrastructure as code. So the same way that we deploy Intercom's production infrastructure that our customers visit, we deploy our Okta organization that same way. So we have, change control requiring, peer review from another engineer with context and authority to approve or deny. And then obviously that allows us to, for example, deploy 100 different modular authentication policies across our organization, all as code, like in an instant via GitHub pull request, which is really, really powerful. And then it allows us to, configure which apps are assigned to which policies totally programmatically. So we're not clicking around in the Okta admin dashboard, which results in, obviously it takes more time, but it's a lot of toil and there's inevitable human error when you do that. And, when something as important as, again, that fundamental foundation of identity that our entire company is built on, when that's on the line, like it's important to be able to have that all in code. So huge fans of that.
Okay. Again, I think that's another one of those examples, Lucas, that day one when OIE launched, our capabilities around Terraform were not fully there. I know we heard from many customers, like the importance of being able to leverage that. And yeah, I'm glad to hear you guys have been receiving much more business and technical benefit from that capability.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you release a new feature, and we want to make a change to incorporate that feature into all of our various authentication policies, we can do it in one fell swoop without any human error. Like, it's just awesome.
Great, great. Yeah, do more with less all the time, right?
Yeah, a lazy engineer is a productive engineer.
Great. Well, maybe we could shift from talking about some of the specific technology pieces of OIE and how you guys have been able to take advantage of those to just the higher level business benefit. So as you mentioned, the business that you guys are in, kind of cutting edge, right? You're a technology leader as well. Do you hear from your business leaders kind of the direct or indirect impact that OIE has been able to provide to help further some of your business priorities, goals?
Um, I hate to say no, but I'm frankly struggling to think of a specific example. I mean, it's like the catch-22. It's one of those things that's just so fundamentally, like I said, it's foundational, right? And people take it for granted, and it's like air, right? Like they don't think about it until it's not there, right?
That's usually a great, like I said, that's usually a great signal, because if there's noise, it's usually not positive, right?
Right. Yeah, like I mean, I guess I would say when we rolled out FastPass and went passwordless, we were able to get buy-in from company leadership, right? Because not just that it would be easier for them and everybody else working in the company, but because of how forward-thinking, and seriously more of a modern security approach it was in general. We're always trying to be, it's a cat and mouse game. The hackers will figure out one way or another, every day. So you have to stay one step ahead. But just in general, that's just the approach that we take, is like seeing the trends in the industry, where authentication and identity are going in general. And this was, like I always say, the clear path, excuse me, the clear path forward.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, maybe final area to explore a little bit is it's kind of aligned with what you were just talking about. So this space is changing rapidly every day, or what worked well a year or two ago is obsolete now, because the bad actors are like quick, and so you said you need to stay a step ahead of them. Curious if you have some specific feedback for Okta that we should be listening to. And I know you provide us feedback, but things that aren't currently in OIE or in our platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, like doesn't mean they're all going to be in the roadmap, Lucas, but
Right. Oh, okay. I was
no,
going to say,
love
how
to
much
hear your
time do you
thoughts.
have? I think probably the number one area to improve on, that I think is a big opportunity for OIE specifically, is FastPass for shared sort of bot users in our Okta environment. This is an idea that I've submitted to the Okta Ideas Forum, and I've had tons of people upvoting it. It's been brought up at the customer advisory boards that I've been a part of, and getting other huge Intercom customers, huge Okta customers that are orders of magnitude larger than Intercom. They have this exact same problem too. So like, I know there's demand for it. I think that would be incredibly high leverage for all of your customers, as well as sort of the obvious next step. Because frankly, like we are amazed at how powerful FastPass is, and all of these amazing security features that it affords us with. All this device trust, device context, biometric, passwordless, all these things that we benefit from as human beings using FastPass. Our shared bot users can't really use that. Maybe under certain circumstances, but especially if you have like phishing resistant, like I can't set up a bot user here in San Francisco and then require FastPass for it, and then have somebody on my team in Dublin, Ireland sign in as that same bot user, unless I get on a plane and I do the phishing resistant Bluetooth transfer for them. But that becomes very unscalable and expensive.
Yes. Exactly.
So there's got to be a way to do that. I feel like if you can crack it, you're solving an enormous problem. I know you're working on it, but we're eager. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, appreciate that feedback. Any other major themes that you see us needing to prioritize, especially since I know you do spend time in Okta and the good and the bad that might come with that?
Um, I mean, you're very nitpicky. I'm thinking, well, I did mention one sort of earlier about EDRs not being in device assurance policies and not being able to give that actionable feedback to the users. That I think is an obvious one, if possible. The last one I can think of is around, well, so I guess we're talking about, how the perimeter is not like your network or the corporate VPN or whatever, but it's identity, it's the users, but also the device identity is a big thing, right? So there's a feature you have, I think it's been in early access for years and years, and it's around Windows Autopilot enrollment authentication for Windows laptop users when they're signing into their laptop when it's fresh out of the box. They break the seal on the box and they sign in via Okta to sort of just in time create their own account on the machine. I have a request in the Okta Ideas forum to basically be able to do that same thing, analogous, but for any app, right? Because we use, for example, Apple as integrated with Okta for authenticating to, again, the same idea, enroll, for example, a Mac laptop.
Right.
Currently, you can only do that for Windows, and it's kind of a gap in that device identity space.
Okay, that's great. We are investing a lot in called device access or device access capabilities across whether it's Mac or
Yes,
Windows platforms. So yes, I think we're listening to that feedback, but yeah, you bring up some great points that we will follow up on.
always
that
appreciate it.
feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I'm glad you mentioned device access because that is an area that we're very interested in as well. We historically have had, you're signing in to your Windows laptop. Again, it's kind of similar to what I was just saying. We would love to be able to, and there are some features already from Apple around like platform SSO. Like it's still very early days though, but we definitely want to get into using Okta to have our users sign into their laptops for sure.
Fantastic. Well, Lucas, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to have a candid and transparent conversation about
Always.
Okta, Intercom, our partnership, but also more specific around OIE and some of the capabilities. Thanks for the time, and I look forward to you hopefully being able to provide some open Q&A to some of our customers.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Thanks again, and I guess at this point we'll hand it back to Brent.
All right. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Lucas. So at this point, we have had a couple of questions that have been added to the Q&A, a couple of which are directed to Lucas. So I want to start with those first, and we have a couple of other questions that are more sort of, I guess, directed towards the general Okta team, and we'll get to those as well. But let's start with the questions that are directed to Lucas, and there is one here from Divya. Does Intercom use Okta OIE for customer use cases or for workforce or both? And I'm curious about how Okta is integrated into IAC and Terraform. Lucas, are you able to take that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So currently, we only use Okta for workforce. We don't use it for customers. If it were up to me, we probably would do for both and probably get a nice big discount for doing both. I don't know, but I think that's above my pay grade. And it's not just my team, obviously, as well. But you never know. Maybe sometime in the future, anything's possible. And in terms of infrastructure as code and Terraform, so I don't know how familiar you are with Terraform specifically, but we use Okta. They have an official Terraform provider, and we actually use the exact same sort of Terraform infrastructure as code pipeline that the rest of the company uses to deploy our product itself. So our production pipeline, same exact technology, and just sort of change management requiring GitHub pull requests and approval from a code owner of the Okta Terraform directory. I hope that is helpful.
Divya, did that answer your question, or did you have any follow-ups? So I can unmute you if you have any follow-ups if you're still on the call. Actually, you are unmuted now, or you should be able to unmute yourself if you have any follow-ups. Or did that address your question, Divya?
Yeah, I think that addressed my basic question. I mean, I was just curious when you mentioned that they were integrated, whether you know what you meant by that. Were you able to integrate Okta into the policies you have as part of your Terraform code, or were you using the same, or were you integrating Okta directly, Okta services directly into your applications and servers that you were rolling out?
Yeah, so it's not integrated into our product at all. It's just for workforce identity,
Okay.
like corporate systems. I will say there's definitely Okta features that, because we're always eager to adopt the bleeding edge whenever Okta releases any feature, there is a noticeable lag sometimes. I will be very honest about this, Okta. It would really be appreciated. I'm sure there are lots of other customers that use your Terraform provider that are eager to be able to manage those new features via Terraform. And sometimes we'll have to wait painfully long time. So whatever you're paying your team that manages the Terraform provider, it's not enough, or maybe you need to hire more of them. Because we're eager to use it.
Good feedback.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lucas. All right, so let's move to another question. We have a question from Owen. Besides more robust EDR signals, are there any posture checks or items that you'd love to see added to device assurance policies? Lucas, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And Owen, I'm glad to see you here in the Q&A. Always nice to see your name. I know, I mean, I discussed, the examples of specific partnerships that you have, like CrowdStrike, I said, I think was your first third-party EDR. I think more recently, we've also adopted your integration with Chrome, or specifically enterprise managed Chrome for the Chrome device trust integration. I would love to see if there were a way to make this more sort of modular in a way that customers can integrate their own. The biggest one that probably comes to mind would be like OS query. So you could query anything arbitrarily that is compatible in OS query's entire platform, rather than just like you adding specific posture checks at a time. I know it's probably extremely difficult, and I'm probably simplifying it drastically. But yeah, OS query is a big one. I know like Collide basically is like the commercial version of that, and 1Password bought them. So I think hopefully 1Password is giving you guys some very healthy competition in that space. I just feel like there's a lot more things you can check for on a device, like very random, tiny, arbitrary things that you might not think of in advance. But I'm sure your customers are thinking of them. And I see Owen perhaps is joined and can unmute. I don't know if he wants to.
Yeah, did you have any follow-ups, Owen? You should be able to unmute yourself if you do.
Oh yeah, no follow-ups there. OS query is exactly what we would like to see as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think the other thing that we're very eager for when it comes to device assurance is the grace period functionality. That's something I've been bugging our CSM about forever. And I think it was just released in early access, and I tested it and sadly found some showstopper bugs in it. So I've been going back and forth both with our CSM as well as on an Okta support case. And I think you had hoped to have fixed those bugs today, or yesterday rather, in the 2024 10 release or whatever, the release that came out yesterday. But it looks like the bugs still aren't fixed, but maybe in the next release, because again, we really want to use that. Our employees will all benefit immensely.
Good deal. All right. So I see there are a couple of other questions that appear to be more directed to just the general Okta team. Dwayne, you should be able to unmute yourself. Do you want to just ask your questions?
Yeah, no, I was actually just going to kind of add on to the kind of remark about being able to do more with, it sounds like we're calling it OS query, but this idea where in an example where we've deployed or we've converted to OIE, We have the Okta Verify client loaded up on all of our end user workstations, but we deal with a lot of shared spaces, whether it be conference rooms or things of the like. And we'd prefer not to force people to have to log into Okta Verify each time they use those machines. And so in our case, the ability to use maybe something, say, based on machine name, if we have a common pattern in which we could say if the device's machine name, contains this prefix, then, you don't have to require the fact that Okta Verify is on that machine.
I actually have a comment that might be helpful for you, Dwayne. And obviously, I think the ideal would be what you're suggesting. Maybe Okta builds a feature in so you can fix this, maybe on a device by device basis. But I will give a shout out to one of the engineers on my team, Bilal Habib. He's a very smart guy. If anybody's in the Mac admin Slack, you've probably seen him. He figured out, or maybe someone else figured out, but he shared it with us, that you can actually bookmark the sign out URL for your tenant, and it won't automatically trigger a FastPass authentication event.
Oh, that's my other question. That's awesome.
Yeah, if you're able to like set that as the managed bookmark for the Okta login, like on those devices, then you won't have this problem at all. And that's something that you can do yourself today.
Oh, are you saying in my example where conference room PCs are a thing, or my other question where it drives us nuts that we can't get to a landing page where we can sign in?
Oh, I thought that they were the same question. So, but I think the thing that's driving you nuts where your Okta sign-in page is automatically triggering a FastPass prompt, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, if you just bookmark your sign-out URL, then that won't happen.
Oh, interesting. All right. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure I know what our sign out URL would be, but that's good to know.
Yeah, I can probably find it in
put
in the chat.
You should be able to find it in your admin console as well.
Okay.
Or if you just sign out of Okta, it should be the URL.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is we have SSO turned on, so every time you sign out, it automatically logs you back in.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like in a constant loop.
So you have both desktop SSO and FastPass? Is that what?
Desktop SSO and Okta Verify loaded, not necessarily FastPass policies set up.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we don't have desktop SSO, so your mileage may vary.
Oh, gotcha. But the sign-off thing still might be interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I've not tested this in OIE. It's been a long time since I've tried to use this URL, so I don't even know if this works in OIE, but I can test it offline.
Okay.
Yeah, follow up with you. But
that would be great. Yeah. And there's kind of just finishing off the thought around conference room PCs. We ultimately just don't want people to have to log in, but the problem is if they don't log in, then the device doesn't show managed that they're coming.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, in addition to the sign out URL, in Classic, at least, there's a sort of there's like a default login screen that bypasses the desktop.
We use that all the time prior to OIE.
And I have not tried it in OIE. Is that
no, it doesn't work. If you have desktop SSO, it automatically pushes you in.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Do we have? I don't see any other questions queued up in the Q&A. Do we have any other live questions from anyone? If so, you can just raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question. Going once.
Actually, I myself might have one more comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Like I said earlier, we're very vocal for better or for worse. One of the things I noticed that's been frustrating for us is we use the in-device assurance policies, the dynamic OS version compliance, or basically Okta manages for us whatever is like the quote unquote up-to-date version of a given OS, like Mac OS or Windows.
Right.
That is, I think what happens is you're not able to update that latest version that you define unless you're making a change to the actual Okta release number. So what often happens is that lags behind by quite a while, sometimes like a month, which is honestly a security issue for us. We want to be able to kind of set it and forget it and let you ideally very promptly update that definition of what is the latest version of each OS so that we can require it. But yeah, it's been kind of slow. I don't know.
So you're saying like when you use the dynamic one, it's like the update doesn't happen. There's some lag time between when the update
Yeah,
happens
exactly.
and
So like,
when
for example,
the
Apple recently released macOS 15 Sequoia, like a month ago. And I think it was just this Monday is when you first started requiring it as the latest version dynamically.
Yeah, that's
So,
correct. It is a part of the release code.
Yeah.
There are other mechanisms that we can do to help update that on a more frequent basis. We can definitely take that as let's look into that and see if that's a possibility thing we can put to the product manager that owns that for sure.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'm sure everybody on this call probably agrees.
Yeah, it could be moved to a different section, like not basically hard coded in code. It could be just put to
Exactly,
a table
yeah.
somewhere, and then you can reference that. So that's a good suggestion. I like that. I still don't know how frequently they would want to update that, like as in like day 0, day 2 or whatnot, but I'm sure that it could be faster than a monthly release. So
yeah. So if you use the dynamic OS version compliance alongside your newly released grace period functionality, then it's okay. We don't care. You can immediately on day 0 say that the newest release is the newest release, because I mean that sort of matches reality. And then we could bake in a grace period of like give people 2 weeks or whatever to update. And frankly, that's how Duo works. And they've been doing it that way for like a decade now.
That's cool. That's a good suggestion. I think we can find the PM for that and bring that to them.
Amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions from any of our audience members or Lucas, if you have any more?
I think I'll spare you. That's the last thing I've got.
No, not at all. All right. In that case, thank you very much once again, Lucas, for agreeing to sit down with us and have this conversation and share your insights on OIE. We really appreciate your time. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Dimitri, who's going to walk us through some reminders on how to go through the OIE upgrade process, as well as some resources that are available to you around OIE. So Dimitri, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brent. So yeah, before I get going, I would like to also personally thank Lucas and Greg for this testimony and fireside chat. Very enjoyable. So I want to walk you through, guys, pretty briefly through what we call the upgrade reminder. So we have covered this segment a number of times. So if some of you are regulars on our Meetup webinar series, I apologize, and you can probably drop off. But in case you haven't, let me walk you through some of the highlights as you embark into your journey to upgrade from Classic to OIE. The first thing I would like to remember is you have to look at the fundamentals. We have changed a little bit the vocabulary between Classic and OIE. We are a little more rigorous in terms of defining what authenticators, authentication method, and factor types are. So there's a little bit of vocabulary adjustment here. The second thing, and I think that was mentioned by Lucas very interestingly during the conversation, the policy framework, and Greg, the policy framework is an upgraded one, is a different one in OIE. It's much more flexible and powerful. So we also encourage you that you have a look at the new structure with the global session and the shareable app level policy, but more importantly, to start thinking in terms of assurance level. One of the biggest benefits of OIE is that you do not need to specify a sequence of factors to achieve a certain security outcome. You just define what is the top level element. You say, I want a password and an additional factor, or I want any two-factor types, and OIE will figure out which factor to prompt, which authentication method to prompt to the end user based on the authenticators you have enrolled in your system. So much more high-level abstract and effective. And finally, we also discussed this quite in detail during this conversation, device context. So we usually said from device trust to device context, there's much more functionality that you can use in terms of leveraging the context of the device that is trying to authenticate. So have a look at the fundamental first. Then we briefly mentioned that, but it is a self-service upgrade. So you can go in Classic. You probably see the banner all the time. And if you've found a way to remove the banner, it appears in dashboard, the last choice, OIE Upgrade Hub. It's a two-step process. So when you decide to go upgrade First, we're going to be running a number of eligibility checks and action items or consent that you might have to go through before you can schedule the upgrade. Then you schedule the upgrade, and the upgrade happens at the time you've scheduled it, and usually it takes a few minutes. But take it like an hour window, and it is transparent to the end user. Now, if you go into your upgrade, we have actually put together a checklist for you. So I've already mentioned, look at the fundamentals. There are many resources. We will browse through them at the end. But we have all these webinars have been recorded, and there's a big upgrade hub where you can find lots of information. Make a test plan. We actually have a template that has been published. You can get inspiration from this template and customize it to your needs. We also usually highly recommend that you first upgrade preview. So you have a preview org and a production org. Obviously, make sure both are in sync. We all know that they are, but maybe they are not always. So make sure the two orgs are in sync. Upgrade your preview org first, so address the blockers that might have been found during the eligibility process, understand the consent, schedule the upgrade. Once you've done that, familiarize yourselves with the admin UI changes. There are a few changes in the UI, so it's good to have a look and spend a little time in the interface. Run your test plan, and once you've done that for preview, do the same for production, and then you're ready to activate new OIE features. Next slide, we have I'm not going to cover all these because I want to stay brief here, but these are additional guidance based on our experience. We have organized these in two categories. So these are things you want to look at and see if they apply to you. So on the left side, there are a few end user experience changes. So you want to be aware of these, and depending on the maturity of your end users, you might have to communicate that directly to them or at least notify them that there might be some slight little changes. And on the right side, it's usually always the case as soon as you start customizing an implementation, when there is an important upgrade, which is an important upgrade with OIE, you get more features, but it's an important upgrade. There are some things that you might want to look at it. So if you've customized some recovery flows, if you have automation scripts, you want to make sure that all those customization will work well. By the way, we have an upcoming blog post episode specifically on custom implementation that you will have access to in our community space. So let's close the session by looking at the upgrade resources. So there are 4 main blocks you can look at. The first one, which probably should be your entry point, is the OIE Resource Hub. So you have an overview, you have a link to the knowledge base, you have a link to the community site, the YouTube playlist. So all the information is aggregated with pointers from the hub. So start with the hub. Moving forward, the knowledge base, which just mentioned, so it goes into more details on very specific articles about different topics there. Now, this was mentioned during the call. If you have been using for Okta Classic for customer identity, or if you've done some specific development on your widgets for your own authentication, you might be in the developer category. So there is a developer upgrade hub as well with all the latest OIE information, APIs, and code samples and all those kind of things. And finally, I also encourage you to go into the community website. There's 2 important things in the community website, or 3. First, you can ask questions. The second one is we do have blog posts on OIE. There are actually 2 blog posts on the OIE fundamentals, and we are just launching a series on demystifying the upgrade. So you will see a communication on that very soon. And finally, and probably the most important aspect, is you can schedule office hours. So you can have one-on-one time with our experts if you are getting started on OIE and you have some questions or you want some more confidence. Please schedule some time. You can have access to our experts here. So that's what I wanted to quickly paint for you for the upgrade process. So the fundamentals, how it briefly works, the checklist, and the resources. And I'm going to returning the floor to Brent for closing comments. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Dimitri. Just a note for everyone still on the call. I did drop links to all of those resources that Dimitri walked through in the chat window. So if you want to grab those links, they are there for those of you watching live. For those of you who are watching on recording, there are QR codes on each of those slides that will take you to those links as well. So please take advantage of those resources. That is all in terms of the content we have for today. Again, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your time and attention. And most importantly, thank you very much, Lucas, for taking the time to chat with us and share your insights today, and to Greg as well for emceeing our fireside chat. Once again, for Dimitri and Andy and Rashir and everyone else on the PAT team that's been helping out with all these, thanks very much for your help, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.